For millennia, humanity believed in perfect circles governing the heavens, a cosmic dance of flawless precision. But one man, driven by an almost mystical obsession, dared to question this celestial dogma. Johannes Kepler sought harmony in the stars, a mathematical symphony he believed God himself had composed. He found his opportunity in the meticulous observations of a flamboyant nobleman, a data set unlike any other. Years he toiled, wrestling with numbers that stubbornly refused to fit the ancient mold of perfect circles, until a revolutionary idea sparked. A geometric leap that would rewrite the laws of the universe. He proved the unthinkable. The paths of the planets were not divine circles, but earthly ellipses. If you're fascinated by the collision of science and belief, and the minds that dared to change our understanding of everything, subscribe now. Journey with us into the world of Johannes Kepler. To understand the man who solved the heavens, you must first understand his world. A world where science, magic, and religion were inextricably woven together. In this world lived Johannes Kepler, a brilliant mathematician who believed the universe was a divine creation, a sacred geometry hidden by God, waiting to be discovered. He was a man with a foot in two worlds, a provincial mathematics teacher by day, and a desperate seeker of cosmic truth by night, writing letter after letter, begging the great minds of Europe for the one thing he lacked: data. He could sense the answer was out there, locked away. He just needed the key. To survive, he did what many astronomers of his day were forced to do. He cast horoscopes for the rich, practicing the astrology he privately scorned. But even here, his scientific mind took over. His astrological charts became maps of a deeper mathematical reality. His life was thrown into further chaos by the 30 Years' War. Persecuted for his faith, he became a refugee, a man without a home. And then, in his darkest hour, a letter arrived. An invitation from the most famous, most powerful, and most difficult astronomer in the world, Tycho Brahe. It was more than a job offer. It was the key to the locked room, the key to the cosmos itself. With his life's work packed in a single trunk, Kepler embarked on a journey. He was gambling everything on a man he had never met, a man known for his genius and his tyranny. Tycho Brahe was not like other astronomers. He was a nobleman of immense wealth, who had been gifted an entire island by the King of Denmark to build a palace of science. Uraniborg? He was a lord in his own kingdom, a larger-than-life figure, famous for his opulent parties, his fiery temper, and the prosthetic brass nose he wore after losing his own in a duel over a mathematical formula. His observatory was the finest in the world, filled with gigantic, custom-built instruments of unparalleled precision. For over 20 years, Tycho had done one thing better than any human in history. He had meticulously, obsessively, measured the stars. But he was a man of contradictions, a brilliant observer who also employed a court jester and believed in omens. And he guarded his data, the work of his entire life, with the jealousy of a dragon guarding its gold. He believed this data held the secret to the universe. And he was right. But it was a secret he himself could not unlock. For all his observational genius, Tycho lacked the theoretical brilliance to make sense of his own treasure. So when he invited the desperate young Kepler, he wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for a calculator, a tool to prove his own theories correct. Their first meeting was a clash of worlds. The poor, pious, awkward theorist meeting the loud, arrogant, nobleman empiricist. Kepler was in awe of Tycho's resources, the scientific paradise he had built. But he quickly learned the price of admission. Tycho refused to share his full data set, fearing Kepler would steal his glory. This is the tragic irony. Two men who needed each other, but could not trust each other. Instead, Tycho assigned Kepler a task he considered a fool's errand. A problem that had vexed him for years: to decipher the strange, rebellious orbit of a single planet, Mars. The Mars data was notoriously chaotic. It broke all the rules of perfect circular motion. It was the ultimate astronomical puzzle. Tycho thought he was giving Kepler an impossible task to keep him busy. He had no idea he had just handed the keys of the universe to the one man capable of unlocking it. Kepler's great war against the heavens was about to begin. And so began Kepler's private war. For years, he descended into a mathematical hell of his own making. He tried to force the orbit of Mars into the perfect circle demanded by ancient dogma. But the data, Tycho's perfect data, refused to obey. The seasons turned, years passed, and still he labored, possessed by the problem, working by candlelight until the brink of exhaustion. It was, in his own words, a war with Mars, a battle between his mystical belief in divine perfection and the stubborn, rebellious reality of the data. After thousands of pages of calculations, he finally created a model that was almost perfect. But there was a tiny, maddening error. A discrepancy of 8 arc minutes. Most astronomers would have dismissed it. A tiny observational flaw. But Kepler, in an act of supreme scientific honesty, could not. He trusted the data more than he trusted his own beloved theories. That decision would change the world. But as Kepler wrestled with the heavens, a more earthly drama was unfolding. Tycho Brahe, the titan of astronomy, suddenly collapsed. On his deathbed, he begged Kepler to use the data to prove his model of the universe correct, muttering, "Let me not seem to have lived in vain." The master was dead. And his treasure, the most accurate astronomical data in human history, was now up for grabs. For Kepler, this was not a moment of triumph. It was a moment of terror. Without Tycho's protection, he was just a poor mathematician, and the data was now in the hands of Tycho's greedy family. The key to the cosmos, which had been so close, was suddenly snatched away. Tycho's heirs saw the data not as a scientific legacy, but as a family fortune. And they saw Kepler as a thief. They locked the notebooks away, determined to either sell them to the highest bidder or use them to publish their own work, built on Kepler's calculations. Kepler pleaded with them, arguing that this knowledge belonged not to one family, but to all of humanity. He was dismissed at every turn. For nearly 2 years, he fought them, legally and personally, for access to his life's work. Finally, in a moment of desperation, he seized the Mars data and fled. An act of intellectual theft to save a scientific revolution. Back in his study, with the hard-won data finally his, the real work could resume. Mars, the god of war, had been conquered. It was time for the planet to surrender its secrets. He returned to the problem, to the circle. But he knew, in his heart, it was a dead end. And in a final, brilliant leap of intuition, he committed the ultimate heresy. He threw away 2,000 years of astronomical dogma and abandoned the perfect circle. He decided to test a shape that had long been dismissed as an imperfect, ugly oval. The ellipse. And then, the miracle. The rebellious data points of Mars, which had tortured him for years, suddenly snapped perfectly into place along the path of the ellipse. It was a perfect fit. This was it. The aha moment that unlocked the cosmos. The war was over. He had won. From this single discovery, the first law of the universe fell into place. The planets do not move in circles, but in ellipses, with the sun at one focus. And the second law quickly followed. A planet sweeps out equal areas in equal times. It moves faster when it's closer to the sun, and slower when it is farther away. The divine clockwork was not uniform. It had a rhythm. He had found the harmony he was searching for. It wasn't the simple music he had imagined, but a far more complex and beautiful symphony. The ancient dogma of the circle was shattered, replaced by a new, truer, more elegant geometry. He published his findings in a book aptly titled Astronomia Nova, The New Astronomy. He had created a system that worked. For the first time, humanity could accurately predict the positions of the planets. He had looked into the mind of God, and for the first time, he had read it correctly. With his new astronomy complete, Kepler had given the world a revolutionary truth. But the world was not ready for such a leap. His book, filled with universe-altering laws, was met with confusion and indifference. Europe was consumed by the madness of the 30 Years' War. Kepler had offered them a map of the heavens, a testament to cosmic order. But humanity was far more interested in its own earthly chaos. Even the great Galileo, while praising his work, could not bring himself to accept the heresy of the ellipse. Clinging to the ancient beauty of the circle, Kepler was a man out of time. He had solved a puzzle no one else was asking, and was now left alone with a profound and lonely truth. As the war drained the empire's coffers, his salary as imperial mathematician went unpaid. And so, the man who had decoded the planets was once again forced to tell fortunes, casting horoscopes for nobles to put food on the table. It was the ultimate irony. He possessed the mathematical keys to the cosmos, but had to speak the language of superstition to survive. But even here, his genius was an act of rebellion. He would secretly embed his scientific predictions into his horoscopes, hiding the truth in plain sight. He was a man caught between two worlds, the telescope and the crystal ball. The dawning age of reason and the long, dark night of superstition. He found his only refuge where he always had, in the pure, silent, perfect world of mathematics. And so he began his final, great work. A quest to complete the mission he had started as a young man, to find the harmony of the world. But before he could find the harmony of the heavens, the chaos of Earth came for him in the most brutal way imaginable. His elderly mother, Katharina, an herbalist and healer, was accused of witchcraft. In a town gripped by paranoia and superstition, she was chained, imprisoned, and threatened with torture and execution. Kepler, the great astronomer, immediately abandoned his stars and raced back to Earth to face a foe far more irrational than any planet: human ignorance. He entered a real-life nightmare, a medieval witch trial where hysterical accusations held more weight than facts. Here, Kepler wasn't just an astronomer. He was a son, fighting for his mother's life with the only weapon he had: logic. He spent 6 agonizing years as her legal defender, using his brilliant mind to dismantle the absurd, fantastical claims one by one. The strain was immense. The battle took everything he had, aging him beyond his years. He used his scientific reputation, his status as imperial mathematician, to appeal to the highest authorities. It was the ultimate clash. His life's work was to replace the mystical with the mathematical. And now, he was fighting that same battle for his own mother's soul. He systematically demolished the prosecution's case, providing rational, scientific explanations for every magical event. And after a long, brutal fight, he won. He secured his mother's freedom. He had faced the darkest superstitions of his age and defeated them with the clear light of reason. Scarred but victorious, Kepler returned to his great work, his quest for the final secret of the cosmos. In his book, Harmonices Mundi, he brought his lifelong obsession full circle. He tried to match the orbits of the planets to musical scales, finally composing the music of the spheres. It was a beautiful, mystical, and deeply personal vision. A tapestry of geometry, music, and astronomy, all woven together. And buried deep within this strange, mystical text, he revealed his final law, the one that would tie the entire solar system together. Kepler's third law, a simple, elegant, and profoundly powerful equation that connected every planet to every other planet in one beautiful, overarching harmony. It was the master chord in his celestial symphony. And in that discovery, he had finally found what he had been searching for his entire life. He had heard the music of God. In his final years, Kepler, now old and weathered by a life of struggle, embarked on his most practical and grueling work: the Rudolphine tables. It was a colossal undertaking. a star catalog and planetary almanac of unprecedented accuracy, the final practical application of his life's discoveries. For the first time, humanity had a reliable roadmap to the heavens, a tool that could predict the motions of the planets for decades to come. But the chaos of Earth was never far behind. As the 30 Years' War ravaged his homeland, Kepler was forced to flee again and again, always clutching his precious manuscripts. He was a scientific refugee, a man whose mind mapped the cosmos while his body had no permanent home. He endured immense personal tragedy, losing his wife and several children to illness and the hardships of the era. Yet, through it all, his hand never stopped. The quest for knowledge was the only constant in his chaotic life. When the Rudolphine tables were finally published, they were a monumental success. A gift of order and predictability to a world drowning in chaos. Across Europe, sailors, astronomers, and mapmakers began to rely on his work. The name Kepler became synonymous with precision. He had built a perfect clockwork model of the solar system, one that actually worked. He had solved the great how. But a final, deeper question remained unanswered. Why? Why did the planets follow these specific laws? What was the force that guided them? It was a question he did not have the tools to answer. He could only ask it to the universe and wait for the next genius to arrive. In the winter of 1630, an aging Kepler embarked on one last journey, traveling on horseback through the cold. He was not on a scientific quest, but a financial one. He was trying to collect the salary the emperor still owed him. On the road, he fell ill with a sudden fever. The man who measured the heavens died humbly in a small inn, far from home. A quiet end for a man who had lived such a turbulent life. His grave was simple. His epitaph, a perfect summary of his life. I measured the heavens, now I shall measure the shadows of the earth. His body was gone, but his 3 laws remained, hanging in the cosmos like immortal constellations, waiting. For a generation, their true world-altering significance was understood by only a handful of mathematicians. His ideas were a seed planted in the fertile soil of the scientific revolution. A seed that would lie dormant, waiting for a singular mind to recognize its power and bring it to bloom. Decades later, in England, another brilliant, solitary mind was wrestling with the secrets of the universe. A young Isaac Newton. Newton studied Kepler's works, and unlike his predecessors, he understood everything. He saw the breathtaking power of Kepler's 3 laws, and then the famous apple. A simple observation, but in Newton's mind, it sparked the greatest question of all. If a force pulls the apple down, does that same force reach all the way up to the moon? This was the colossal leap. The idea that the same simple force that governs an apple also governs the heavens. And what did the moon do? It followed a path, an elliptical orbit, perfectly described by Kepler's laws. Kepler's laws were no longer just descriptions. They became the evidence, the unbreakable pillars upon which a new universe would be built. Newton, standing on the foundation Kepler had built, formulated his own grand theory: universal gravitation. The connection was perfect. Kepler had provided the how the planets moved. And now, Newton, using Kepler's own work, finally provided the why. As Newton himself would later say, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." There was no greater giant than the poor, mystical, stubborn mathematician who had waged a war with Mars and won. Every rocket we launch, every satellite that guides us, every probe that explores our solar system flies along a path first charted by Johannes Kepler. He did not live in vain. He was the man who revealed the hidden harmony of the heavens, a profound and eternal echo of genius.